sometimes there are things that just travel and they work anywhere. And I have to admit that on Chris Paul. That's the one side of it that I was hoping would be the case, and so far it has been. I still have feelings sometimes when I see him in a Warrior jersey. There are still moments where I'm like, ugh, the looks on his face, the antics, the flops, whatever. When those happen, we're only 5 games in. I'm still just like, oh God, I can't believe this is happening in a Warrior jersey. But what I do admit, and never really fought against, is that Chris Paul's game travels. Like that, he's Chris Paul. He's a Hall of Famer.
Everywhere he goes, their team improves.
So his intelligence and his ability to make the other players around him produce at a higher level was never in question and never will be. It's kind of like bringing free food to the office. That's another thing I did earlier today.
You brought free food to the office?
Well, I made some cookies from Trader Joe's.
Look at you.
But they were good.
You made your you baked?
Trader Joe's. It's a box. You pour it into a bowl and you stir it up and you put it in the oven.
Oh, it's a mix. Okay.
Yeah, it's a mix. But anyway, point being is they were good. They weren't amazing. But Dummy made the mistake of making cookies 2 nights before Halloween. Well, now the whole house is covered in desserts and nobody wants the cookies because they've all got 28 bags of M&Ms. So I'm like, you know what? Before these get hard, I'm going to bring them to the office. And I just referred to them as good, not great. They didn't make it through the first segment of our show.
They're gone.
Gone.
That means they were good.
Those cookies are Chris Paul. Food being put out on the table at the office works. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter how great they are. When you walk by and there's free food, you take one.
Okay, but not to interrupt the celebratory moment here on the 2nd of November, days after the beginning of the year. But my big concern with Chris Paul had nothing to do with Chris Paul and would they like him as a player? He knows how to play. And it was never going to be, is Chris Paul going to fit in? These guys are all about winning, and this guy is a great competitor. My question about Chris Paul is, can his body stay intact playing the tempo that the Warriors like to play? And if not, will the Warriors then play his tempo? But ultimately, the big question is Chris Paul going to be playing in March and April and May when this championship is really on the line? That was my concern. It wasn't about, is Chris Paul going to make them smarter? Is he going to make them more competitive? Will the players like him? I thought those things were for sure. It was, is Chris Paul at 38? And, he's a great car with 215,000 miles. Is he going to be around when it matters?
That's an omnipresent question. I'm not going to disagree with you. That's always going to be the concern until we realize that it's not. Like, until he makes it through the playoffs, he's not going to make it through the playoffs. But I do like something Steiny said earlier about this, is we are projecting something on Chris Paul that is actually true about all of them. Name all the other important Warriors that don't have the name Kevon Looney. Name all of them. And every single one of them has the same characteristic. At one point or another, they've not been there in their career when you wanted them there. That's true for all of them. Andrew Wiggins, gone for 2 months. Klay Thompson.
But it was situational.
Whatever. Are you there?
But if their cars, Curry, Thompson, Green have 110,000, Chris Paul's got 185,000.
I think you're a little low on Thompson. Based on what the body has been through.
Okay.
This is someone who has missed 2 full seasons. Steph Curry has missed more games than Chris Paul the last couple of years. Draymond Green has dealt with injury, and so has Chris. So, again, I'm in agreement with you. That's definitely concern number one. I just share that concern with all of them. I have that concern with Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. Like, it's the same concern for all of them. Are you ready at the end of the year?
Yeah. But history tells you that older players, this is a young man's game, and the Warriors play an up-tempo style. And could Chris Paul at 38 play their style? What was incredibly encouraging to me was when I first saw Paul in the preseason, And I'm like, wow, he looks great. Not he plays great, because I know he plays great. I've watched him for years. It's his body. He came to camp. He looks great. Now, as long as the hamstrings, the quads, as long as the legs stay in shape, they got something. Because, they were smart when Steph was on the floor, and then they were almost like a totally different team that wasn't all that smart when Steph sat. Now, going into last night's game, the Warriors were plus 31 in the 65 minutes that Steph was not on the floor.
Yeah,
so
that's the difference.
That's a huge, huge thing for Golden State, and hopefully it continues.
That is absolutely the big difference, no question. And it's what they've been struggling with, the non-Steph Curry minutes, and now they've actually been good. So getting back to my way too getting ahead of ourselves question, how has the first 5 games adjusted your thought on the type of contender this team is?
It's interesting. I thought, in the beginning of, in the preseason, offseason, I'm thinking Warriors are going to be lucky to be a 6 seed. Mm-hmm. Now I think they're going to be they'll be a higher seed.
You think they'll be home in round 1?
Yeah, I think they're going to be a top 4 seed.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I thought that they would have a chance at the beginning of the season. I didn't love their chances. No team. I'd bet the field against anybody, right? Even Denver, but Boston, Milwaukee, all of them. But that said, I thought that they would be in the mix if some things went right. But same, where I look at the first 5 games, there's a couple characteristics that really matter to me. It's not that they're 4-1. I could give they're only 3-2, 2-3 even. It's not that. The characteristics that I look at and I go, oh, this might go even better than I hoped. The characteristics are, as you said in the crossover, the return of the joy, which to me speaks to chemistry, and I guess maybe it's even just an extension of the first point. It's the way they looked on the road. It's not even just that they won those games. They're blowing teams out on the road. I think all of these are emblematic of the same thing, which is simply that smart, talented basketball players are all on the same page. It's all this group has ever needed. The only times that they are not a contender are they're either hurt or they're fighting. That's it.
Right.
Go through Steph Curry's entire career once they got to the top of the mountain. The only thing that has ever stopped them, injuries and infighting. And neither are happening right now.
And also I think one other factor. Last year on opening night, I think they had 5 guys on their roster that were 22 or younger. They had a lot of youth on the roster that was not ready to play. Yep. They were developmental players. They don't have a developmental roster anymore. Podziemski and Trace Jackson-Davis are rookies. They're rookies that could play rotation minutes. Steve would say it if you put them out there that if Peyton can't go or Corey Joseph can't go, he's confident in putting Podziemski out there. If somehow one of the bigs can't go, he's confident in putting Trace Jackson-Davis out there. Why? Because those guys know how to play winning basketball. They've played a lot of basketball. I mean, Trace Jackson-Davis played 4 years in the Big Ten. Podziemski has demonstrated early on that he knows how to play the game and play the 2-man game, play off of others. What I love about Brandon's game is that he rebounds the basketball, and that's his kind of natural thing, and rebounding tends to translate. So last year, I mean, good players that I liked. I mean, Patrick Baldwin, a nice guy. Rollins, I think he's got a future. They had some nice players, but they had 5 guys on a 13-man roster under 22, most of which you couldn't really depend on, so they had a very thin bench. This year, they're loaded on the bench. Kerr's got his rotation. Last night he played Sarge, Kuminga, Paul, Peyton, and Moody off the bench. 3 guys didn't play, but the 3 guys that didn't play can play if you got to have them in there, and they can play effectively and smart ball. So they're just far deeper.
888-957-9570. We want to take your phone calls specifically on what Draymond Green said last night. And if you're just joining us, here are the comments that he made when the subject of chemistry and togetherness came up after the victory.
Last year, we had an awful team as far as chemistry goes. It was pathetic. But chemistry has been a strong suit here. That's why Steph has been here for 15 years, Clay's been here for 13, I've been here for 12, and Luna's been here for 9. Because chemistry is a strong suit, and Andre Iguodala. The list goes on and on. That's why so many guys have been around here for so long, because the chemistry is what we've hung our hat on. Well, you look at last year and you say, oh, man, this team hasn't lost a Western Conference series under Steve Kerr. And then it happens. The big reason why is our chemistry sucked. And so, I don't look at that as, oh, man, like this is a team that we've struggled with chemistry. I mean, yeah, we struggled with our chemistry for years. It was a one-year thing. Things, stuff happens, and it was an anomaly. But, we're right back where we need to be in that department. And most importantly, I think there's still room and will be growth in that department.
We will ask Steve Kerr about all of that coming up in a little bit less than a half hour. He also said this, and for me, this to me was a specific answer to a question so many of us had all year long. Why aren't you better on the road? To me, this answered it.
Last year was horse. It's hard to come to work. Y'all see me trying to do Clay's little paper airplane. It was hard to come to work, not fun, And so this year you see the joy, on guys' face when they come in the building. You got guys like staying over 2 and 3 hours after, just sitting around talking, getting here 2 and 3 hours early just to be here. It's like you start to see that and you're like, okay, this is a group that likes being together.
It's just like this station. It's why you were here at 11 o'clock this morning, Larry, because you just can't get enough.
That's right. That's right. Well, and Kerr made the point. Last year was the outlier. They've really, in his tenure here, and this is year 10 for Kerr, they've always been a great road team. They really have. Last year was the exception, not the rule. So it's good to see him getting back there. And I also get the feeling when you're on the road and the other team's building and the place is howling, there's a little bit of a us against the world mentality, and I think it kind of tests your cohesiveness. It tests, how together are you? And when you're not together, I think it shows.
A reminder before we get to some of your calls that yet another spot in the knockout game at Chase is coming up in a little bit less than 2 hours. Knockout at Chase Center today, every day for the next 2 weeks. Make sure you're listening at 4:30 for more details and an opportunity on that. Let's go to Andrew in Pleasanton. Hey, Andrew, you're on with Willard and Krueger. What's up?
Yeah, so hope you're having a great day, guys. I just had a sort of a take on the discrepancy between Clay's version of events and Dre's version of events.
Okay.
I think most of us would agree that Dre's is closer to reality, but I don't think that Clay is like, I don't know what's in his head, but I think that it's possible that he is telling us his version, that it is true for him, because Clay just sort of, we love him, but God help us, he lives in a different world than the rest of us, right? Like maybe to him,
it's a nice way of saying it.
Maybe to him, maybe to him it was all good. I couldn't say for sure, and I think it's sort of a case of our strengths become our weaknesses, where, he can shoot forever, and that's how he gets so hot, is like the next shot's going in every time. And maybe he doesn't quite get the same sort of team aspect, the same sort of relationship kind of aspect with people who aren't Steph or Draymond.
Yeah.
And Draymond's take is a lot more Draymond. There's a lot more passion to it. And I think he's more accurate, but the way he says it, like some people might take offense to the amount of truth spoken. It's rude to be that honest, but yeah, like I think that's one of those things where like Dre's passion is both a strength and a weakness there, and demonstrated in his version of events.
Yeah, Andrew. I mean, maybe both of these. Thanks, Andrew. Maybe both of these are completely authentic. I don't know exactly what their experience was. It's funny when he says Clay lives in a different world than the rest of us. I would argue they all do. I would argue very, very vehemently, in fact, that we have no idea
They're
what
not
it's
buying
like.
cookies at Trader Joe's.
I don't quite think that we understand what that fishbowl is like, especially for these three guys, Steph, Clay, and Dre. And, of course, they have a different perspective on it. Draymond was knee-deep in it, and many believe the number one cause of it, while Clay right, is that guy where he's like, well, I'm on a boat and I'm meditating with a dog. So, like, whatever the hell's going on, right? There are some people with the office politics who just stay out of it. They're like, I'm going to lunch. You guys yell at each other in the hallway. I'm out of this whole thing. But if you want to look at it collectively, I don't think that we can take Clay's response at face value. It wasn't fine. It might have been for him, but it wasn't fine in a grand sense because look at the results.
Well, I mean, I find both answers to be candid and refreshing because that's the difference in the personalities and the perspectives. You know, Draymond's given us his honest perspective. Clay probably just is maybe he's a high road kind of guy. Maybe he's taking the high road. Hey, man, it was all good. You know, he doesn't seem like how's things? Hey, it's all good, man. I'm reading the CC Times and kicking my feet up with Rocco, and I'm on the boat, and you know, it's life's good. I don't think that he gets bogged down in the details of interpersonal, you know, bad relationships run amok and that kind of thing.
Maybe not. By the way, here is his response when asked about what Draymond said and the chemistry last year versus this.
I mean, I think every year is great. We're in the NBA, and you get to go to push shots up and play defense for a living. I don't even pay too much mind to that. I think, obviously, chemistry is great this year, but every time I put a Warriors uniform on, I'm gloating because it's just like it's a dream come true. No matter how many years you play, the NBA is a place where dreams are, like, met, and I think this year's great chemistry-wise, but last year was good as well, and I think just every time you step into an NBA facility, getting to go to work, I feel great. So I don't think too much about chemistry. I think everything, winning solves all.
I got a boat. I got $300 million in the bank. I got Anna money. I got a hot girlfriend. Life's good.
Listen, there's no such thing as a bad day. There's no such thing as a bad day.
Yeah.
By the way, that's a message that I've tried to give our group here at the station where it's like, whatever you got going on at 2 o'clock, okay, FedEx drivers cruising around with people honking at them. They're sitting in traffic. That's who's listening. There's no bad day.
Right.
This is what we do for a living. This is incredible.
Right.
There's no bad. So all of that.
I love that perspective because
it's all
like,
true.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're in the toy department of life. You know, nobody wants to see the person working at FAO Schwartz on the register miserable. They want somebody who's smiling.
Right.
What'd you get?
Right.
What did you get? I got a Matchbox car. Oh, isn't that awesome? Go home and play with that.
But run into me for the first time in 2 weeks and ask me. Say, hey, Willard, how you doing?
How you doing, Mark? What's going on?
I'm great. Total lie.
Right.
I mean, total lie. Like, no, I am, but there's stuff, right? There's stuff.
But nobody wants to be.
Nobody wants.
Hey, Krug, what's going on? Oh, you kidding me?
Right.
Got taxes.
My mom called. She's got weird stuff going on. When she showers.
My neighbor just trimmed his whole hedge back, and he left his hedge clipper in my yard.
It's a disingenuous question. How you
cares.
doing?